What is up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of Commander Brew Crew, the show where we talk about what it's like to brew and play this game we love called Magic the Gathering. With me today, as always, is a man who, as we see more cards in Lord of the Rings, gets more and more giddy every day. It's Andrew.
I am always here. You will never be rid of me. I am a permanent fixture in your life now. So.
I found a deep fake document in our Google Drive today.
Oh, yeah?
For a plan for Andrew to take over the channel. I'm slightly afraid of it, but you know what? We will take that issue as it comes.
See that there's the document, but then there's also like the actual verbal announcement that I made with my master plan to take over the channel once the Lord of the Rings set fully releases and comes out. And my master plan will reach its final stages.
You know, there was a lot of sarcasm, but I can't help but feel like you meant it.
I guess we'll find out, won't we?
We'll find out. Josh, our normal third, is unfortunately not here with us for this episode, but it's a good reason why. Him and his wife just had their first baby, a baby girl, and she's doing okay, but obviously there are more things important in life than recording a Commander podcast, which is kind of crazy to say.
No,
but
no, honestly, I don't see why he couldn't be here. The baby was born a few hours ago. I mean, come on. Priorities, man.
She's probably healthy by now.
But the important part's over. Like, you were there, you know. Yeah, just come hang out and talk about cardboard.
I'll be back. Just roll on us. Well, Andrew, let's start our episodes like we start every episode, which is talking about what we've been tinkering with lately. What have you been tinkering with? I know, as normal on this podcast, that's a very loaded question.
It is, yes. So the one that is currently under construction, I'm finally, as much as I've been a strong proponent of white being in my colors, the colors of my deck and for my mana, I don't know that I've ever really built a mono white deck that I've loved. But I think one of the few really, really, really fun cards that came out of Brothers War was Mural, Shield of Argiv.
Yes, very good card.
And I'm excited to try and just mass produce soldier tokens.
I feel like
in mono white.
You'd certainly hope a mythic mono white commander would be like half decent, and then she delivered.
You would hope so. Yeah, no, she that's a great card. The other thing that the other one that isn't, it's more updating. With some of the new cards is I've been redoing both of my Sir Gwyn and Dihada with some of the new Knight support that we got, as well as some of the new Planeswalker support, like with the talents. And so updating those and seeing what works best versus what maybe could come out to improve the decks.
We could probably spend a solid 45 minutes talking about my love for the talents and why I think they're some of my favorite cards that have been created in the last 2 months. And that's what we're doing.
I don't have the script for this.
No. So to ask me the question, what have I been tinkering, is a very loaded question that no one should ever ask me because you do not have the time to hear me talk about it. But there's two big things outside of the channel that I've been working on lately. The first is what I jokingly am referring to version like 9.0 of Vishgraz. Vishgraz is a deck that I started brewing on the channel at the start of Phyrexia RB1, and it's a deck that I really had fun testing. But as I was working on Brimaz, which has come out earlier this week as this episode posts live, I realized that deck could probably be a lot more Phyrexian tribal, and it probably could take advantage of a lot more of those synergies. So that deck is kind of spinning that way. I'm pretty excited about figuring that out.
Yeah.
And the second kind of little platform this is a little bit more of a project than it is a single deck, but I've been in the process of kind of retooling Sithis a little bit, a deck that I really love and I really enjoy. But I think I realized pretty quickly that it's more of a combo deck than it is an Enchantress deck. I feel like it just doesn't get to enjoy the fun that is Enchantress. And so we got to see some cards already from March the Machine, The Aftermath, and there's the new Calyx made me really want to make a Enchantress deck that has something to do with auras a little bit more than normal. Every Enchantress deck has some auras in it, but I want to do a little bit more than that. So obviously I land on the first choice, Tuvasa, of course. I thought I'd tinker around with that. Of course, get to play things like Ivy, Spell Thief, and Light Paws, which could be kind of fun to kind of find a deck structure for that. But
just make sure when you build Tuvasa that whenever you get all those auras attached to it, that you just sit there
and
never attack and just be a threat, but never actually do anything about it.
And then the second one was a commander that I always kind of wanted to build, but I'm never sure why I never pursued it more. And that's Tatsunari from coming out in Neon Dynasty.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of like the idea of Sultai Enchantment, so I think that could be kind of fun. I already have some ideas of where I want to take the deck, but I'm excited to kind of maneuver my way through figuring out what do I want a Sultai Enchantress deck. I mean, the reason to play it is Doomwake Giant. Let's be 100% honest. Like, that's the only reason you'd ever actually play a Sultai Enchantment deck. I'm kidding, of course, but that's a deck I am excited to try out.
Well, with you going into Vishgraz again and looking at Brimaz, and these Phyrexians sure love their asses, don't they?
They do. They
Sorry,
do.
I couldn't help myself.
No,
I've got to throw the puns in there whenever I can.
Well, for instance, a lot of topics we could cover. We had originally considered finishing up our brew philosophy discussion, but Josh wasn't going to be here this week, and we didn't think it'd be right to finish up that discussion without him, because a lot of the final part of that conversation gets down into the nitty-gritty that I think we really all approach differently, and I wanted to make sure we had all three of our voices for that. So we thought, what's the most logical next thing we can do as a commander? March of the Machine review, friends. We're going card by card. No, I'm just kidding.
Every single one.
Prepare for a 9-hour podcast as we go through every card in March of the Machine.
And we're not just giving like quick thoughts, like, oh, this one's good, this one's bad. We're going to
potential commanders, what our favorite art is for the card, what the current price is at these two. I mean, we are going in
deep dive.
Now, today we thought we do a little bit of fun. We want to talk about our favorite commons and uncommons in the set for the 99. There are a lot of cards that are released that don't always see play in Commander. But we thought, why not try our favorite cards in each of the mono colors, and then for the 99 between the commons and the uncommons, and then we'll talk about our favorite rares in the mono colors for the 99, and then we'll wrap up our discussion with a little bit of our favorite commanders, because it would be unfair to have a podcast about brewing and not talk about some commanders from time to time. Yeah. All right, Angela, let's start with the commons. What white common do you have for us?
So for me, I started out with Angelic Intervention. It's an instant costing 1 and a white that says target creature or planeswalker you control gains protection from colorless or from the color of your choice until end of turn. If it's a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So I think that this is something that, because we have some other white instant cards that are like, oh, this card gains protection from a color of your choice. I can't think of the names of those cards off the top of my head.
And there's a couple good ones. You got God's Willing and white for 1 mana.
That's right, yeah.
You've got plenty across that and other colors as well.
But this is the first one that has specifically said colorless or color of your choice. As far as I know,
I don't believe that even like Skrell, the card from like Phyrexia LB1 that's been really hyped up lately.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember if it gives that hexproof from colorless or not. So this might actually be another bit of an iteration of something like that. I mean, protection spells are really important. The best part about this, right? You can give yourself kind of pseudo unblockability, right? Because protection stops you from being blocked. Or you can give yourself hexproof if someone's targeting your commander or a creature you control.
Yeah,
so
a key piece of your board, and it's
really like
decently cheap.
I love that Planeswalker is stapled onto it too.
Yeah,
that's actually pretty important because more often than not, that won't save you it would save you in combat if it's already being attacked. But like, there's a lot of situations where you could get away from some removal, right? If it's a single target.
Yeah, single targeted removal. And then, I mean, yeah, it would also prevent something like, saving one of your key pieces from like a board wipe or something like that of a particular color.
The board wipe, unless it's a damage-based board wipe, it won't save it from it. Because remember that destroy all effects don't target.
Oh, okay.
But if it was a damage-based board wipe, like Blasphemous Act, you would be able to save your card from it. So yeah,
that was my choice. I thought that's a great little protection
it's a solid
spell.
common, and what I like about it is for those budget decks, I feel even like a budget deck, I think probably this is a slam dunk, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a perfect card for the slot. It was hard to pick a white common, to be 100% honest, because like I am so bougie in the sense that I normally just go right to the rares. So
Yes.
like I had to like really go through.
Well, and I thought that's why this was a good exercise for us because, a lot of people just kind of skim right over the commons and uncommons.
So I picked another 2-mana white card. This is Sunder the Gateway. It's a sorcery. It says choose one, destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls, incubate 2, or incubate 2, then transform an incubator token you control. I thought this was a really interesting card because it's destruction for 2 mana, which is always a good thing. Destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls isn't a bad effect. You can never have too many of those. It isn't at instant speed, I guess, which is the downside to the card. But my thought process was, we're seeing this incubate mechanic coming up. But the other nice part about incubate is they're artifact creature tokens, which means, all right, a lot of decks care about artifacts. They can use artifacts to their means. So I feel like there's probably more than one route we can go with this card, whether it's just incubating in a deck like Brimez that cares about incubating, or if you're just in an artifact deck and you care about getting another artifact in the battlefield.
Yeah, a different kind of artifact or something that supports an artifact synergy for sure.
It seems like I like the diversity of the cards. You have your choice, and so you can kind of put it in
Because who doesn't like options?
And I mean, you do get to transform an incubator token you control without paying the 2. So you kind of think about it, you incubate again, and then you don't have to pay the 2 to transform that 1. So if you have a pretty massive one laying around, not bad, right? Yeah. You get to transform it for free. I'll go first on the blue. For the blue, I picked out Temporal Cleansing. 3 and a blue for a sorcery with Convoke. Convoke's pretty important. It's been a big part of the set. It's the owner of target non-land permanent puts it into their library second from the top or on the bottom.
I like the flavor text for this one. Now's not a good time.
The thing I think that's interesting about this card is, of course, we got a Convoke precon, and I think Convoke's a really important keyword. It's going to allow this to get played on a lot of decks. I think the interesting thing to think about with blue spells, I know a lot of people look at new blue spells for can they get reduced with things like Mizzix or Magnus the Red? Where are they playable? What can you do with them? I feel like this is just an interesting card. And hey, you put a target non-land permanent, so it hits almost anything. Second from the top or on the bottom. And the good part about that is then it's going to be even harder to go get. It's not like you return it back to their hand where they can just replay it. Now they either have to draw it or get it down. Of course, if you choose somebody's commander, they can put it back in the zone. But I think with this, you're going to target someone's combo piece, someone's really important card, and put it back into the deck, and now they have to get it back.
Yeah, again. Or even then, you force them to, or if they do have some sort of draw capability or draw spell, then, congratulations, you just maybe kept them from, getting to another good piece of their deck for one more turn.
I think the important part about that, putting it back in the deck or putting it back in the hand effect, is you're trying to kind of decrease someone's tempo. And if it's a really important piece of their deck, they're going to then immediately put it back down, which is going to get them behind, hopefully.
Yeah. So then for my blue card, I picked the one that I think got a lot of showcasing leading up to the March of the Machines release was Moment of Truth. 1 in a blue instant, because if we're not playing instants in blue, then what are we doing?
We're not playing Magic. Yeah.
It says, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of those cards into your hand, 1 into your graveyard, and 1 on the bottom of your library. I can just already think of so many different deck types and commanders that this just immediately benefits from. Even just looking at the next 3 cards of your library and being able to put any one of those into your hand, even if it's just that, to me, that's great, especially on a common card. Just getting to look ahead and skip some turns ahead from your drawing. There's just value there. And then with putting cards into the graveyard as well, that can synergize very well with especially any of your decks that have blue and black. And some reanimation or mill or whatever the case may be. I just think there's a lot of applicability to
I like this because this is kind of like something like expressive iteration, right?
Yeah.
Where you're choosing where these cards go. Instead of one in your hand, playing one and putting one back on the bottom. In this case, it's putting one in your hand, putting one in your graveyard, and putting it back on the bottom. And I think you hit it nail on the head. You can play this in like a blue-black deck or a Sultai type, graveyard deck where you could potentially load the graveyard for what you want. So I think that makes it a little bit better. Well, Andrew, for our black common, we picked the same card. And it's because, to be honest, I just honestly couldn't find a black common I really liked other than this one.
I was in the same boat. I couldn't find one that's really stood out to me in any way.
Oh, it's because, Andrew, this is a reprint. we've seen this card more than once already. In this same card, this is of course new art and a new name. Do you want to read it for us?
Yeah, it's a Corrupted Conviction, another instant costing 1 black. It says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards.
So we have Village Rites, and I believe one other black spell are very similar to this. The same effect, sack a creature, draw 2. Of course, this time we get this menacing looking Ajani.
Yes, very, very scary looking Ajani.
This is the kind of thing we want to see printed more of. There are going to be sacrifice decks that care about this. They want to sacrifice their creatures for the benefit, and for one black mana, that's what you already want to do anyway.
Oh yeah, the 1 mana for 2 cards is great. You've got aristocrats or sack decks or reanimator decks that, you know, sacrificing a token or a creature that is meant to be sacrificed or has a death trigger. You've got more of those than you can shake a stick at. I know several of my Orzhov and Mardu decks. You know, the first one that came to mind was my Jan Jansen deck, where I can sacrifice all those artifact creature tokens that I'm making. It's just almost 2 free cards. Just the 1 mana, like that's great.
What I like about this style of card, this or Village Rites, like probably the most popular card of this archetype that's been released in the last year or so was Deadly Dispute, right?
Yes.
Which is very similar to this. It's 1 more mana. You can sacrifice an artifact or a creature.
Yeah, you have the option.
But you draw 2 cards and get a treasure.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit better. But what I like about this is it's just as good. No, you don't get the treasure. No, you can't sacrifice an artifact.
Spend 1 less mana.
But you get the same goal, which is the point that's there. Well. Yeah. My red common, there was a lot of really interesting choices, but I thought, why not pick a card that's so like cards that already see play in Commander? I picked Rawl's Reinforcements, 1 in a red for a sorcerer. It says you create 2 blue and red elemental creature tokens. I think this card is my pick for 2 reasons. 1, we have lots of spells in Commander that make 2 tokens for 2 mana, and there's a lot of decks that care about this. But with all of this new Convoke running around, all this new Convoke support, this red spell makes blue and red tokens.
You potentially just made another spell 2 mana cheaper.
So if you think about it, those tokens can either tap for blue or red, which is going to help you in your Convoke deck. I think this could see a lot of play because, you know, cards like Dragon Fodder or Forbidden Friendship are already red spells that make 2 tokens that get played. Why not kind of get an upgrade in those Convoke decks, because those creatures can tap for either color?
Yeah, and I mean, especially with it having Convoke, you know, this spell costs 1 in a red, and you're creating 2 creatures that can generate you red or blue mana, or you know, just generic mana. So it's basically, you know, you're not losing out on anything. You're netting a much better, more efficient mana.
The upside to Convoke is that the creatures don't tap on their own merit for Convoke. You tap them with the Convoke ability.
Spell you're casting.
So you don't have to worry about summoning sickness. Yep. So you could Rawl's Reinforcements to get you technically 2 blue mana to use towards a Convoke spell.
Yeah, on that same turn. Well, mine, I don't know. I feel like this one may not see, some people may not quite see this the way I do. I picked Shatter the Source. I'm seeing a trend with me with picking instants. I think all of my picks so far have been instants. But it's instant for 5 in a red, which is super expensive, but it does have Convoke. And it says choose one. Shatter the Source deals 6 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle, or destroy target artifact. So 6 damage is quite a bit. The more that I play Standard on Magic Arena, the more I realize that these sort of damage-based red burn spells, like six damage is not anything to scoff at for sure. And the fact, you know, if I'm playing, you know, my Balmor list where I have, you know, Third Path Iconoclast and I'm just producing artifact tokens like left and right. Getting this down to 6 damage for potentially 2 or 3, probably not 1 mana, but, you know, potentially even 1 mana. Like, that's a lot. That's pretty good, assuming that you can get your board to that state. That's very efficient mana usage.
And look at the versatility. Creatures, planeswalkers, or battles, or destroy target artifact. So
lots of versatility.
This card can deal with 4 different types of things for 6 mana. Yes, there are red spells that are better than this that are going to get played over this, but I think that this is the kind of card that we want to see more of, and it's budget. a format that we've talked about off the podcast a couple times that we've had shown some interest in is there are people who play Pauper Commander. There are Pauper formats where you use only commons, and this is probably a slam dunk in something like that because of the value that it has. I thought it was funny that you brought up Third Path Iconoclast because it was going to be the example that I brought up eventually of people sometimes like to look at commons and uncommons and say, oh, well, they're not very good. They're commons and uncommons. But you look at a card like the Third Pass Iconoclast, which actually is being played over Young Pyromancer because it makes tokens that are artifacts instead of just standard things. And there are so many decks that care about artifacts these days that is a strict upgrade over a card that's considered to be a staple.
Yeah, and especially with all the artifact support that Blue-Red has.
So it just goes to show you that just because a card's a common or uncommon doesn't mean that it can't be played. In fact, we'll find that some of these cards get played probably more in their strategies that they're relevant in more than anything else.
They're much more niche. They're not as, crazy, oh, I can find a million different ways to play this. But no, they certainly have their value within certain archetypes, paired with certain commanders or colors, for sure.
As our resident green player, I had to pick a green common that I thought best represented green in this set, and I think we both did a pretty good job at doing that. And we both picked the two kind of most popular, common instant spells that green gets in any set. I chose to go for the ram through the bite card with Cosmic Hunger. 1 in the green, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature, planeswalker, or battle. And I picked this card because we have a Phyrexianized Coma absolutely eating a ship.
Because what else is Coma going to do when Kaldheim is being invaded except
eat a ship?
Just become Phyrexian and get completed and start.
I'm really sad we didn't
ships.
see a Phyrexianized Coma. I would have been so happy to see that card.
I've seen some fan submitted ones, and those look really cool.
What a shame. But anyway, Andrew, what did you pick?
So again, also kind of for sort of aesthetic and lore reasons, I picked Atraxas Fall. So not an instant this time, a sorcery for 1 in a green. Destroy target artifact, battle, enchantment, or creature with flying.
So this is kind of that return to nature style, green spell that we always get. I love this card for 2 reasons. 1, you see the spike through Atraxa.
Yeah, Atraxa is dead.
And 2, one of my favorite commanders I've been brewing around as of late that I have yet to debut gets the flavor text on this card saying "Fallen angels stay fallen." Hensi Toolbox Torre.
Yeah, it's just so cool. Yeah, it's just such a cool thing for me to see that. Those are the guys that were the ones that brought.
You see the Riveteers on the card. They're all happy. They're proud. They defeated Atraxa.
They're the ones who defeated Atraxa.
It's so good.
But yeah, again, who doesn't like options to just straight up destroy something on the board that is bad for you, good for one of your opponents?
And again, we see battle included on these cards
because I think battles are going to get. I don't
know how homogenous battles are going to become in Commander, but I think most people will be trying them. Like I definitely took all of my decks and I said I have to justify not playing X battle or Y battle because like it is good. You know what I mean?
Some of them are really, some of them kind of aren't super impressive to me, but there are some that I can see them are just good all on their own, and others that are good in certain strategies.
I'd love for us to.
I think we'll see them not be ubiquitous as like when they introduced like equipment. Now lots of people make equipment decks and aura decks, but I think battles will certainly continue to see their place at the table.
I'd love for us to do an episode on battles eventually so we can kind of talk through where we think to be played. But I think the thing for battles to remember is we've only seen siege battles. We haven't even yet seen what battles can be when they're not sieges.
Yeah.
So Andrew, start us off with the uncommons. What did you pick for your favorite white uncommon?
Yeah, so this one is a no-brainer. I'm pretty sure that this is one that you probably considered as well. Surge of Salvation. I'm continuing the theme of white having protection of some kind. For 1 mana, an instant, you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. The second part of that is nice whenever you are dealing with someone who has a way to deal black and or red, deal damage to you from a black and or red source. But that's just sort of superfluous to me. The fact that for 1 mana until end of turn, everything that all permanents that I have and myself gain hexproof. That slam dunk. That is for me almost an auto include in anything I have going forward that is white, that I would even mildly want to just consider protecting my board.
I feel like we're kind of like right. We're 2 steps away from Teferi's Protection in a lot of ways, but the 2 concessions that we take from Teferi's Protection to this don't make this card terrible. Like, it is pretty darn good. Hexproof is an important thing, especially in a format where most of our removal is single target.
It's targeted, yeah.
Or your big splashy spells, if they target multiple things, still normally target.
Yeah.
You know, so that's pretty important. And I think it's a card that could see some play, especially in a creature deck or a deck where you have a ton of permanents. The white uncommon for me was really hard. There's a couple that I really enjoy, but I joked with you on the phone earlier. It's tough for me not to pick this card because it's not often we see new stacks pieces come out.
Yeah.
And especially not stacks pieces that are in a specific creature type. So I picked Phyrexian Censor, 2 and a white for a Phyrexian Wizard. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-Phyrexian spell each turn, and non-Phyrexian creatures in the battlefield tapped. Like, as far as stacks pieces go, like, this isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. It's more annoying than it is actually like, this is bad.
But what I love about this is Phyrexian decks are going to use this to their advantage, and they're already going to take a creature type that's gaining some ground, and it just makes it even better. I love the art. I love the card, and I just think it's kind of interesting. I like stacks effects when they're easy to deal with. When they're on creatures, when they're on things that can be gotten rid of, I don't mind them. It's a little bit more cheeky stack effects that I don't particularly enjoy.
Yes.
Right.
So some of the more like overtly oppressive stacks effects.
When you want to use a winter orb, but you can't even get out from underneath it yourself, or people who want to use these pieces but don't understand how to use them, it's pretty rough for a team. Andrew, what do you have for your blue uncommon?
Okay, so I have my first creature that I picked, but the card itself isn't terrible. It's not bad in my opinion, but I literally just picked it for aesthetic and almost kind of humor reasons, because I think the art looks so funny and the name is funny. I picked Referee Squad. It's a blue creature homunculus, costs 2 and a blue. It has Convoke, so you can tap your other creatures to help pay for it. It has Vigilance, and when Referee Squad enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it.
So, you put them in the penalty box. It makes sense, right?
Yes.
Kind of an interesting card.
I mean, so this is March of the Machine, right? So I have this picture in my head of these guys, these one-eyed homunculus in these referee suits, just coming up to the Phyrexians being, red carded. You guys got to go to the penalty box. No invasions here.
That's great.
So I like. There weren't a whole lot of blue uncommons that really vibed with me. So that's the one I went with.
Yeah, I agree. I went with Xeric Strobe Knight because it was in the Knight's Precon, and it's a half decent card. A 2/2
and that
for 2
Precon,
and a blue.
It's not bad.
For flying and vigilance, create a 2/2 white-blue creature knight. Creature with vigilance, actively if you cast 2 or more spells this turn. I don't really like the staple on the end, because I feel like you could just use this thing to tap for a mana on a token on an uncommon. I don't think it'd really be that broken at the end of the day. But it is a relevant knight in a color that is actually being supported right now, and I believe this was included in the Precon.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is a half decent card. It got included, and I think it's a pretty solid card.
Yeah. A 2/2 flying with vigilance for 3. I'm not gonna turn my nose up at that.
There are worse things than that.
Yeah, and if it just happens that I can make another knight with vigilance, cool. Like that if it turns out that I play 2 spells, I like that it doesn't cost anything. That it is just a tap, because I mean, if you're gonna have that stipulation of casting 2 spells and then you want me to pay to get another creature out, and that card would be
I think the upside would be
is.
if it didn't have to cast the 2 spells. And I know why they did it, because then you could technically attack with it and then tap it to replace itself. And I get it, but I think for like
but it's got vigilance, so
that's what I'm saying. You attack with it, it doesn't tap.
Yeah.
Then on your main 2, you tap it to make the token, so you kind of like replace itself. I just think it would have been a little bit more playable for Commander in that sense. But going on to the black uncommons, it was kind of tough. Like a lot of the battles in black on the uncommons were kind of interesting, but I picked a card without realizing that I was going to be sticking into this Phyrexian theme. And it's a card that I think is kind of interesting, and intrigued to see how it plays in Commander. Completed Huntmaster, 2 and a black for a 2/3 Phyrexian Elf Warrior. 1 tap, sacrifice another creature artifact, incubate 3. So we have a sack outlet that makes another artifact. I think this is just kind of interesting. I feel like you could do this once per turn.
Like a self-replenishment almost.
Yeah, you can get the effect. You could take a small incubate token you don't like and make an incubate 3 out of it. You could take a creature that's already attacked and turn it into another thing. I mean, it seems like a lot of the modern Phyrexian decks care about using your toxic might tokens or these incubator tokens for value. And so why not get a card that's a one-time sack outlet on it? We have so many cards that are great sack outlets that do a lot of things in this color. I think it's interesting to see one at uncommon that is actually pretty solid.
Yeah, and the fact that you don't even have to transform that token, to sack it again or to do something else with it is nice. So for me, I picked my first battle. I picked Invasion of Eldraine. So that is a battle that costs 3 and a black. When Invasion of Eldraine enters the battlefield, target opponent discards 2 cards. Okay, not
4 defense counters.
Yeah, four defense counters. So yeah, not a terrible front side, but also probably not something that's going to be super impactful either, especially if someone wants some of their cards to go to the graveyard. But the backside is fun. It's Prickle Fairies. It's a 2/2 with flying. It says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, Prickle Fairies deals 2 damage to them. So this goes into some of the more oppressive nature of black, where it's just like, you know what, I have the power to make you discard, so I will make you discard. And just adds that little insult to injury like these fairies do. I think the lore text for this card says, when the courts fell, Eldraine's Fae turned from their usual pranks to deadlier tricks. And I think that's very fitting for a style like this.
The art on the front of this card is like one of my favorite arts from the set. Yeah. I love the art of Castle Lochthwain
you've
from
got
the original
Lochthwain there in the background.
And here you have with all the beautiful kind of night-looking, deadly Eldraine. I just think it's so pretty. I mean, obviously, I know we don't like to talk about her, but this is a card aimed at a deck like Turgid, where you're just trying to get your opponent's value.
You said the T word.
Honest, isn't too expensive for something like Turgid. No. This is almost perfect, and this is exactly what you want. Something like that.
Yeah, I'm also thinking of the Braid, Braid's Risen Nightmare, stuff exactly, like that. Yeah. Some of the newer cards I think there's one of the Shieldreds has something to do with like discarding and things like that. So there's lots of black synergies that play into that.
Well, moving into red, Andrew, we got our first time, I think, of all the list, we both picked battles for our red uncommons,
but not the same one.
No, I'll go first. I picked an Invasion of Mercadia, 1 in a red. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards, and it has 4 defense counters. This is a kind of a play on Faithless Looting, right? Just a little bit, but you get 2 cards. But then you get to the backside, Chiron Flamewright, a 3/3, and it says 2 in a red, tap, discard a card, create 2 1/1 blue and red elemental creature tokens. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste on a turn. Yeah. This card is absolutely perfect for these Windgrace style landfall decks that want to pitch lands anyway, and I think it gives you a upside for doing it. I mean, that's what a lot of those graveyard-based landfall decks try to do, is get an upside for getting lands into your graveyard and then pulling them back out. What I like about the Flame Red on the backside is not only do you get tokens, but all of your creatures then get haste. This is this could be a finisher depending on how wide you go. This is a lot of interesting things, and it's an uncommon that has a ton of value. I actually have seen this in my tinkering with my Windgrace list that I've had laying around for a while. A lot of people are actually putting this into Windgrace just straight out for that.
Well, we both know that you just hate putting mass producing tokens onto your field. So I'm really surprised that you picked this one. Yeah, and the fact that it's a thrill of possibility on the front side,
super good,
is good. So for me, I picked my battle was Invasion of Regatha. It's 2 in a red. It has 5 defense counters. Says when Invasion of Regatha enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to another target battle or opponent, and 1 damage to up to 1 target creature. It's not as good as something like lightning bolt or shock or something like that, where you're dealing pretty efficient damage for little mana. But again, 5 total damage is nothing to sneeze at. I really like it for the backside. Disciples of the Inferno. It's a 4/4 human monk with prowess. So anytime you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of the turn, and that can be cumulative. It says if a non-creature source you control would deal damage to a creature, battle, or opponent, it deals that much damage +2 instead. We're used to seeing. What's the red card from?
Yeah, you got Torbram, you got Solfim, you got all of these red creatures that increase the amount of damage, right? That things are being.
Was it mechanized infantry from mechanized warfare from Brothers War? That adds that red or non-combat damage +1, but this one does +2, and you have multiple effects of those that stack up. You're really hurting your opponents with burn and just extra little ping damage.
Those Torbran, those Solfim, those new Urabrask decks that are trying to deal damage with spells want this card, because you flip this thing over and then your damage is getting even better. The front side dealing 4, which if you have Solfim or Torbran out, is 6. That's pretty good. And then 3 to the creature. It's not going to be hard to flip it, because remember, it is a permanent, so you can deal damage to it with effects if you want to.
Yeah.
And then you flip it over, and it just adds. I mean, this is exactly what I think you want from a red uncommon, especially in Commander, where whenever we were trying to deal with damage, anything that increases our damage makes it even better. Right?
Yeah, and I love that prowess is tacked onto it. The fact that the 4/4 can just get bigger, especially if you're playing small low to the ground spells that just ping for damage like lightning bolt, like shock. That's throwing a couple of those in there, and then just make your creature even bigger and more threatening.
You've already mentioned it. I'm sure you've seen this with something like Balmor. Prowess is an ability that adds up quickly over time.
For sure.
If you're playing a lot of these small spells and get them off, you'd be very surprised how much +4 or +5 to your board goes wrong very quickly.
100%.
Getting into green, Andrew, you picked what I think will probably come down as the best green uncommon in the set. Why don't you read it off?
I 100% agree. Your pick was pretty good too, though. So I picked Kami of Whispered Hopes. It is a creature spirit for 2 and a green. It says it's a 1/1. It says if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a permanent you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters are put on that permanent instead, and then you can tap it to add X mana of any one color, where X is Kami of Whispered Hopes power.
Wizards has really loved putting this hardened scales effect on things other than hardened scales.
Yeah.
We see this. In Jumpstart 2022, we saw something like Benevolent Hydra. Like, we're seeing all of these cards in this +1/+1 counter synergy that take hardened scales and staple it on to another card.
Now, I mean, I just think it's great of Wizards to finally include some +1/+1 synergies with green, because that's not something
that's never happened
It's
before.
never happened before. They've never done anything like that.
No, I think this card's going to see a ton of play, and I love mana dorks that tap for X, where X is its own power.
Yes.
Because in a +1/+1 counters deck where you throw this and even just green and white,
throwing those
where you have
left and
Cathar's
right.
Crusade or you have something else, like, this is just going to get buffed to absolute
Put
heck.
in the Kaldheim Vorinclex, double +1/+1
Or you go into
counters.
something like you could go into
Doubling
something
season.
like something like Chishiro or one of those like modified type decks.
Yeah.
There's plenty of ways to take this kind of card. It was tough for me not to pick that card because I really, really enjoy it. But I decided to pick what I thought was kind of cheeky. So Wizards made another overrun effect, and I think this is kind of like think about it, this is kind of like a fixed Triumph of the Hordes without making it like really broken.
Yeah, it's not super.
It's called Storm the Seed Core, 2 and 2 green. Distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among up to 4 creatures you control. Creatures you control gain vigilance and trample until end turn. I like this because in the +1/+1 counters deck where you care about this, you're going to make things modified, which is going to give you other effects, right? Think about a card like Kami of the Whisper Host we just talked about, our other cards. You could double that to 8 counters, depending on what you have out. 16 if you have doubling seasons out. This can be expanded depending on how many you have. But Vigilance, Trample's already good at its own right. You want your green finishers to give Trample, but Vigilance I think just makes it even better.
Even better.
Because now you don't have to worry about attacking because you can just block if you need to. And those +1/+1 counters stay. They don't go away.
No.
It's not
until end of
It's
turn.
not like an overrun where you're just getting +2/+2 and Trample until end of turn. You know, you're keeping that added benefit.
Well, I also I really love the art in this, and what little I know about the story beats for March of the Machine, this moment seems to be, certainly a big moment in the story. So I like the lore of it as well, and how it seems to fit in with the one of the more climactic moments of the story.
Well, Andrew, instead of storming the Seed Core, let's storm the rares, baby. Let's get into white. It was very hard for me not to pick this card because if there's any one white card from either the Commander decks or the regular set that I'm the most excited to play with, it's Wand of the World Soul. And this is my pick. If you care at all about creature token decks or spell slinging decks that care about tokens, pick this card up before it gets expensive.
Yeah.
2 and a white for a mana artifact that enters the battlefield, taps for a white, or it taps to have the next spell you cast this turn have Convoke. This card is going to put in so much work. It is completely dependent on the spell you cast next, but I think it is gonna get ridiculous in the right decks, what you can do with this.
Oh, yeah.
Tap this, cast my Avenger of Zendikar for no mana. Tap this, get down my Finale of Devastation for no mana. Like, there's plenty of things you can do with this.
Yeah, putting this in like your Jetmir or something like that, where you just crank out tokens and take over the whole board, the whole table.
I love the idea of this card for Jetmir, but I like this card so much more in like the Galton Mavrin type decks, or your Kaikar or your Jeskai tokens decks, because they're already wanting to get those down anyway. Like, this card seems perfect for that, especially when you can pair it with a card like Jeskai Ascendancy to untap them after you've already tapped them for Convoke. Like, I think Wand of the World Soul has so many applications. If Clever Concealment was my pick last set for the card that everyone should pick up before it gets expensive, I feel like Wand of the World Soul is my pick this time around.
Yeah, that's a solid suggestion. Within those token, those go wide strategies, massive amounts of creatures, this card puts in a lot of work.
Only requirement is you have to have white in your deck.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's 2 colors, 3 colors, 4 colors, 5 colors. You just have to have
I think
white.
it would be interesting to see this as just like a colorless artifact, but I think it makes sense to be in white. Okay, so for my pick, I did another battle. I did Invasion of Gobakan. Gobakan. Nah, I got it right the first time. So it's another battle with 3 defense counters. Costs 1 and a white. When Invasion of Gobakan enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. A lot of these battles, I'm finding out, you're not necessarily really wanting to play them for the front. You want to play them for the back.
Well, I think the front side of this one's clearly targeted at standard or a one-on-one format. But the backside is certainly a lot better.
The backside, I love the backside. It's Light Shield Array. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn.
Stop right there. Already good. that's already bonkers good.
But wait, there's more. Sacrifice Light Shield Array. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn.
This card, if you can flip it, is one of the single best enchantments we've seen in a long time.
Holy cow.
This card is so good, especially
you don't have to tap it. You don't have to pay for mana. You don't have to do anything. Just, I sacrifice this. Everything that every creature I control gets.
Think about it this way: once you flip this over, this is a flawless maneuver for free. I mean, this is such a good card. I think a lot of people are going to be turned off because they look at the front side and go, "That's dumb." And
it's only got 3 defense counters, so you can deal with that pretty easily.
But I think that's going to keep it cheaper because people are just only going to look at the front side and go, "That's dumb. Why would I want to cast that?" But then the people who really care are going to look at the back side and go, "That card's fantastic. I want to play that."
Oh yeah.
We'll move to blue, and I kind of cheated for blue, and that's because I
saw that you did. Yeah,
I have a straight tie between 2 blue battles, and it's because I think both of them are equally as good. It just depends on the deck that you're in. The first is Invasion of Segovia, probably my pick for one of my favorite cards from March of the Machine. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample. The joke about that 1/1s having trample is that Segovia is has a joke for being known as being miniature. It's a miniature world. Most people, when they're brought to Segovia, are shrunk down, but because of the Phyrexians, they weren't shrunk down when they came. So that's why you see all of these eel monsters attacking a Phyrexian's foot. But when you flip it over, you get Kaitis, Sea Tyrant of Segovia. Non-creature spells you cast have Convoke. If it was just a hard stop right there, I think it would be...
We'd be good.
Great. But it continues with, at the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. So not only are you giving all non-creature spells you have Convoke, but at the end of your turn, you get to untap potentially your Mana Dorks, really important creatures.
Or even just get some defenders up.
But I don't think every deck's going to take advantage of Invasion of Segovia, which is why I also chose Invasion of Arcavius. When it enters the battlefield, search your library, graveyard, or outside of the game for an instant or sorcery you own, reveal it, and put it to your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle. Now, quick side note. Outside the game in Commander, unfortunately, doesn't mean anything. You don't play with anything outside the game. This doesn't mean exile. Unfortunately, the way this works is kind of a bummer. In a normal format, that would mean your sideboard, but we don't get access to the Commander. But then you flip it to the backside. Invocation of the Founders. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand, you may copy that spell. You choose new targets for the copy.
That is absolutely crazy.
No matter what, hard
No
stop.
matter what.
This isn't
free copy.
This isn't something like Double Vision where it's the first one you cast each turn.
Yeah.
This is literally just every single instant sorcery spell you cast from your hand is doubled.
My only issue with this card, like, this is a great card.
Gotta get to the backside.
It's 5 total mana and 7 defense counters.
It's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy, and they're not going to. And whoever you give this to defend is not going to let you.
But here's my thing:
get it without a fight.
In certain spell singing decks where you're going wide, you're going to have a bunch of extra creatures. You're going to knock this thing down pretty quickly, and then your opponents are in trouble. So for me, right, the point of sieges are we're giving these to the opponents we think we can target the best and get them down. This is the thing that you pick the person you think you can ram through the hardest and just get it over with and get it flipped. Segovia's a little bit easier. It's only 4 defense counters. I think the 7 is what's going to stop people from playing this. But for decks like Ovika or Kaikar, these decks that can just take massive advantage, Magnus the Red, these cards that could just take massive advantage of having lots of tokens.
Any Izzet spell slinger.
I feel like you're going to take advantage of it. And Andrew, we're not going to stay off the spell train because you picked probably one of my other favorite blue cards in this set for your rare.
I picked the instant card C Double. It costs 2 and 2 blue. This spell can't be copied. Darn. Choose one. Again, more options. Who doesn't like options? If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. Copy target spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Or create a token that's a copy of target creature.
I think the one thing that needs to be pointed out, Andrew, is that it says copy any spell. It means you can copy permanent spells as well. You're not just copying instants and sorceries.
Yeah, any spell that is on the stack, it's just copy for 4. Like, you can copy something that's really big, some sort of big piece that is on someone else's board on your own to get some more value out of those really big, strong, like a Comet Storm or any of the finale cards. I just love copying big things like that and going for the win.
The downside, like at minimum, this is an overcosted copy spell.
Yeah.
At maximum, this is kind of a little bit cheaper, like Sublime Epiphany, where you're copying something and making a token of something you control. So I like it. I think it kind of sits in the middle of cards like that.
So,
Andrew, for your black rare, I know this is a card that you had a lot of love for as soon as we saw it. Why don't you gush a little bit to the listeners?
Yeah, so I don't know what it is. There's just something. I picked another battle, Invasion of Fiora. It costs 4 and 2 black. It has 4 defense counters. When Invasion of Fiora enters the battlefield, choose 1 or both. Destroy all legendary creatures. Destroy all non-legendary creatures.
And that's good enough on its own. That's bonkers good.
That's a great board wipe. That's on a similar level of Crux of Fate for dragons.
And none of your decks would ever want to play this. Dihada wouldn't want to play this.
No legendary matters. Wouldn't want to put this in like a Joda the Unifier or anything like that.
But it flips, Andrew.
It flips.
And what does it flip into?
To Marchesa, Resolute Monarch. I don't know. I think Marchesa in all of her iterations are just she's so cool.
She's looking a lot less queen-like in this.
I think
She's
she looks more
she's
queen-like.
just ripping through.
Yeah, she's ready to just kick some ass.
Menace, Death Touch. Whenever she attacks, remove all counters from up to one target permanent.
Yeah.
Hard stop there. That's a dangerous effect.
That can be very dangerous. That can be very devastating to certain decks. A lot of green +1/+1 counter synergies, planeswalkers.
That auto kills the planeswalker.
Yeah. But then the second half is at the beginning of your upkeep. If you haven't been dealt damage since your last turn, draw a card and lose 1 life. It's a different monarchy. It's a different way of looking at monarchy. It's not based on who has control over it. It's just so long as you
It wasn't good enough to be the monarch. You needed to be the monarch twice.
You needed to be the monarch twice, baby. Let's go. So yeah, I love this card. This is it's definitely not the best card to come out of this set, but
it is.
Oh, if it's not one of my favorites, then I don't know what is.
Well, for a black rare, I don't think it's right picking a black rare unless we answer the question, does it prosper? And the answer to your question for the next card is, it most certainly does.
It most certainly
Hoarding
does.
Broodlord, a 8 mana 7/6 black dragon with Convoke,
Well, thankfully it has Convoke.
flying. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as it remains exiled, you may play it. Not put it in your hand, just exile it face down. And the cool part about that is this card gives that card that ability. So if Hoarding Broodlord dies, you could still play that card from exile.
Yeah.
Oh, and then just spells you cast from exile have Convoke.
Sure. Why not?
So it's that's not helpful at all. I love it. It's a black dragon. I love black dragons. Oh, they're always interesting design space. And then of course, anytime we see a half decent black or red spell, the first question anyone ever asks is, does it prosper?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question is, it most certainly does.
It most certainly does. Fits right into a prosper strategy.
Oh, Andrew,
easy peasy.
Why don't we move into the red rares?
Yeah,
and you can steal the choice I was going to make.
I definitely stepped on your toes a little bit. I could not pick City on Fire.
I love this
the
card.
Enchantment for 5 and 3 red has Convoke. So that 8
Oh, if
mana
this
cost.
didn't have Convoke, this wouldn't be playable.
Yeah. The 8 mana cost. Who cares? You have Convoke. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals triple that damage instead. It's a fiery. It's potentially a cheaper fiery
Not
emancipation.
non-creature damage, not non-combat damage.
Just damage.
Just literally, if a source you control, which is everything you control,
Everything.
this card is bonkers. And like I literally looked at this card and said, I have to build Ovika now because
Yeah.
like this card makes a spell singing Token's deck like that just me want to play it more. I
Absolutely
love this
ridiculous.
card. I pulled one and it immediately went into a sleeve in the binder. I was
Yes.
like, this is the card I want. And this is the card I need. Like,
Yes.
I am a green player at heart. I love me some creatures, but give me a big dumb red enchantment and I'm like, let's go.
But yes, and then if you're going to add on a secondary color to green, it's red.
Yes.
So combine the two together, and you personally have a great time, and nobody else does.
So when I originally made the document, Andrew, last night when I was very tired, when I was holding a sleeping baby, I originally put Invasion of Tarkir in the slot, which I didn't realize until after I looked at the document is a mythic.
It's a mythic, yeah.
so I switched into Ortheon, Hero of Lavabring, 3 and a red for a 3/3 human soldier. So it's a human, which has lots of synergies, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. 1 and a red, tap, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. Okay, we get to copy things. That's pretty cool.
That's fun for 2.
6 and triple red. Tap. Create 5 tokens that are copies of another target creature you control. They gain haste. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Activate only as a sorcery. There are so many cards in Commander like Jaxus or Kiki Jiki that have these really cool cheeky effects where you copy something and you get value. Delina, exactly. I like Ortheon because for just 1 and a red, you're kind of taking an effect that Jaxus or Kiki Jiki do a little bit better. But for 9 red mana, you get 5 target copies of something, and this could potentially end the game. You could copy something like Terror of the Peaks. You could copy a lot. There are plenty of red creatures that if you made 5 copies of them might end the game on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it. It's a human, which fits into some strategies. It's a soldier, which could fit into some strategies. But it's just a card that I don't see as a commander, but I see like as a killer card in the 99 of another deck.
My first thought is when I saw this, for just the instant win, if you've got 9 mana open, and Biovisionary.
Yeah.
Instant
Why are we
win.
not playing Teamer just for Biovisionary Orpheus?
I mean, I thought about it. I was like, what?
The
What's Team
first
Commander
card I
gonna
looked
do?
at when I looked at this card, and what made me slightly sad is I'm pretty sure Morag, Fury of Akum from Zendikar Rising, I'm pretty sure it's legendary.
It is legendary.
But if it wasn't, this could probably just straight end the game. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Getting into green, this was the card that made me Awooga the hardest.
Yes.
on release, and that's Invasion of Ikoria. X green green. When it enters the battlefield, search your library and graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less. Put it on the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. Green didn't need another way to go find your overrun finisher, to go find your Craterhoof, to go find your Gnawbone, to go find a green creature that means something.
But they gave it to you anyways.
But it's an enters the battlefield effect.
Enters
Andrew.
the battlefield.
And that's the thing that makes this slightly more important, because there are decks that are going to be able to double that,
Yes.
if possible. But then you flip it to the backside, and my favorite draggies, my favorite dinosaur is back. Zalortha, Apex of Ikoria, is back. He's finally got his own real card this time, and not a Godzilla card. It says, for each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked.
Because who would have thought that
The only
would not pick a
downside to
big
this card,
dinosaur?
and I know that's really painting the painful brush here, is that it says non-human. So there are going to be some creatures that aren't going to get this buff. But let's be 100% honest, the green creatures that you're going to want to overrun with are not human anyway.
No, they're
so
not.
So it's not going to matter.
Yes, you're going to want to reflect the actual plane of which this card is based off of, and
But
get
Andrew,
some
you
big
picked
dinosaurs.
the green card. I think might actually become the most played green card from this set.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a strong case for that. I picked Tribute to the World Tree, costs 3 green mana, and that's an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Tree. So this is basically a functional reprint of Elemental Bond, right? 3 mana, draw a card if a creature's power is 3 or greater.
Yeah.
But then they staple on like 7 dumb words at the end of it that literally make this card broken in any tokens deck that's ever existed by saying, otherwise put 2+1/+1 counter on it. Elves,
And
tokens.
we've already established that +1/+1 synergies in green abound.
I looked at this card and said, why did we give elves this? Like, elves didn't need this.
They did not
you
need
know
it.
what I mean?
Well, and again, play it, going back to the Invasion of Ikoria, you're playing big, dumb, stompy green. Congratulations. You're getting a whole bunch of card draw over the course of that this is on the battlefield.
Andrew, I don't know if you saw it, but my favorite thing about this card, did you see the edit someone made to this card where the woman is sticking up her middle finger instead of her pointer finger?
I did not see that. That's great, though.
Well, let's hop right on into our mythics. I know we're probably getting up here on time, and I'm all in for it at this point. I don't care. we got a couple mythics that we're going to talk about in the 99. The first 2 are Planeswalkers, and the first one I think is one that we both have a lot of love for, probably for similar but different reasons, and that's Chandra Hobespeaking with that beautiful fire-laced art. 4 red for a Planeswalker Chandra, 5 base loyalty. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once per turn. Her +2, add 2 mana in a combination of colors. +1, exile the top 5. Till the end of your next turn, you could cast an instant or sorcery from among those exiled cards, and a -X to deal X damage for each to up to 2 targets. Andrew, this
that
is a Planeswalker
static
that is,
effect alone by itself, I like.
So I don't know if you remember, I told you when this card got leaked, I said, this is literally a better Double Vision.
Yes.
A card that I'm already playing in multiple decks. This is a better card. But do you know why this card's a little bit better than Double Vision?
Tell me, Millzy.
Are you aware of this lowly blue creature that no one's ever heard of called Displacer Kitten?
You know what? I don't think I have. I don't think that's a card that anybody plays.
Well, Andrew, let me explain to you how this works. So when you blink a permanent, and that permanent comes when you exile it and bring it back onto the battlefield, that permanent is considered to be a new permanent now, which means if you blink this Chandra and it comes back in, the next spell you cast can then be copied. Then what you'd simply do is blink it again with Displacer Kit, and you can now just copy every single spell you play, as long as you have Displacer Kit now. Now, friends, that's one broken thing you do with it. What I like about Chandra is it's a Double Vision with +2 mana stapled onto it.
Yes, with lots of different other abilities that it can tap into and just get more value out of burn, out of playing from exile, copying those instants and sorceries, adding additional mana when you're just that little bit short. This is a great Planeswalker.
I think this is my favorite Chandra so far, just because I think it finally does what I want Chandra to do. It helps you casting spells, and that +1 I think can become more important than we think it's going to be. Like if you're really last ditch needing something to get out of something, like that could be really good. And think about this: there are decks that let you cast the spells from exile or do certain things. So I mean, you could take advantage of that.
You could add in a Passionate Archaeologist, put this in Prosper.
I mean, think about this in a non-creature thing. This is perfect in something like Feldhorn, because you're casting something from exile that way. I mean, like there's a lot of decks for this card, and like I said, I'm just happy that this is probably my favorite Chandra they released so far, and the art's just gorgeous.
Oh yeah. So the next one that we have is another Planeswalker, because who doesn't like Planeswalkers for 3 mana? This is Wrenn and Realmbreaker, 1 and 2 green. It has 4 starting loyalty. It has a static ability. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Again, just hard stop there.
Chromatic Lantern on a Planeswalker.
Chromatic Lantern on a Planeswalker. What else do you want? The +1 ability is up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until your next turn. It's still a land. Its -2 is mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand, because why not? And then the -7, the ultimate, is you get an emblem with you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. Oh boy.
The one thing that graveyard-based decks didn't need was Planeswalker support. Like, I saw this card and I immediately said, I've already been trying to avoid actually pursuing playing Lord Windgrace, because as much as I love that deck, it's gross to pilot and I hate it. Yeah. But I like it because it plays the Gitrog monster. Yes. And I looked at this card and said, why? This card literally makes me want to play both Yarok and Windgrace even more, because it literally perfectly fits both of those decks. This is a 3-mana Planeswalker that at minimum is a Chromatic Lantern, which sure is an artifact that a lot of people don't like because it's not 2 mana and it's not Arcane Signet and it doesn't do X or it doesn't do Y. But it's a really important card in decks that are on more than enough colors. But I really honestly think Wrenn and Realmbreaker goes in any 3-color landfall deck. It probably just makes the deck better, bar minimum.
Yeah, this is actually a great include for a card we'll be talking about here in just a few minutes.
I've also just kind of wondered, are we gonna get a Wrenn Planeswalker that isn't inherently good? Like, are they ever
no,
gonna just
that's just part
gonna punt a Wrenn Planeswalker, or are we just gonna continue to get?
That's just the agreement.
The joke
Wizards
there is that
done.
Wrenn in 6 is a Planeswalker that sees little to no play in Commander because its abilities are better for a 1-on-1 game, and that card is rampant in Modern. Wrenn in 7 was one of the best Planeswalkers for Commander we'd seen in a long time, making you lots of value. Putting a ton of lands from your hand on the battlefield turns out a pretty good ability.
Yeah.
And now we get, in my opinion, the best of the 3 of them for Commander, because if you hit that -7, you basically get a Muldrotha effect, but for every single card in your graveyard.
Every single card in your graveyard, and it's. I've yet to come across a way or play a game where anyone has been able to remove an emblem from me, the player. So
and the
just
best
being
part
able
is,
to continuously
Andrew,
do that
in a deck where you're playing Doubling Season, in a deck where you're caring about Planeswalkers, you can ultimate this the turn it comes down.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like there's so much upside to this card, and it makes me sad every time I look at it because I want to play it in every deck. But anyway,
this is an auto include for my Vorinclex. Pure
deck.
green monstrosity, double the counters.
Clexy boy. Well, Andrew, I thought it would only be fair if we're going to talk about Mythics and March of the Machine that we talk about the Praetors. Because I think all 5 of them are pretty cool cards. I want to go through each Praetor. We can talk about what they do, talk about whether we see them as a 99 card or a commander. Of course, all 5 of them can be played as commanders because they're legendary creatures, of course. But mainly I wanted to get into just a little bit personally of, do you have any ideas where you might use this card? Do you want to build it as a commander? And go from there. So we'll start with Elish Nor, and Mommy is back. 2 and 2 white.
She's back, and she's angry.
For a 3/5 vigilance, whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. I'm not going to read that again. Just look up the card. 2 and a white, sack 3 other creatures, exile Elishnorn, and then return to the battlefield, transform under its control. So this is what all of them do.
Yeah.
If you meet a certain
They
thing
all
at
transform
sorcery
into
speed.
sagas.
And I believe all of them only transfer at sorcery speed. So
I believe so.
So you do have to do this at sorcery speed. And we get the Ancient Etchings, incubate 2 5 times, then transform all incubator tokens you control. So there's your incubator payoff if you're playing that.
Yeah.
The second, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. Ouch. And then the 3, destroy all the permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. Exile it and then return it back to the battlefield face up. Someone will play Elishnorn as a commander because all 3 of the Elishnorn cards have been very good in their own right.
Yes.
What I love about this card is like perfect sneaky good for token stacks.
Yes.
And the reason is because, or any combat deck, because that ability says whenever a source your opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, that basically says for each creature your opponents block with, right? Or if a creature that opponent's blocking with has double strike, then they have to do this twice. Lose 2 life or pay a mana. That's going to get pretty hard to deal with depending on how wide you go.
Especially if you're going against someone who is trying to go wide.
So I think this is perfect in that Vishgraz or Brimaz incubator list, or on its own if you just want to go mono white tokens, because now your opponents have to deal with, do I want to risk blocking and taking more life than I would have if I didn't block? Which, think about it, could end up helping you win the game because someone has to say it's actually better off taking my chip damage than it is blocking, and that's going to kind of put you in a situation where your opponent has to decide, how the heck do I do this? I love this in conjunction with those toxic might tokens.
Yeah, with the mites. That
because
was my
your
thought
opponent
too.
now has to decide, do I take the toxic or do I risk the 2 life if I don't have a mana available?
Yeah, so the only situation I would see Elishnorn here being a commander would be if you're doing mono white Phyrexian tribal.
And there is actually good support for it.
There's wonderful support for that. I see it on Arena all the time, and I lose to it all the time. Have it mono white Phyrexian toxic. Put Skrelv's Hive out on the field, just profit, and get those incubate tokens out, get those mites out, and you're golden. This is a great card for that.
Check with the other players. Once you flip this, your opponent's in trouble.
Yes.
And this is, in my opinion, the backside of this one is one of the best of the 5. If you flip,
it's hard to argue against that as a board.
I have my pick for who's the best of the 5. It's not this one, but like, if you flip this thing, your opponents are in trouble.
Yes. Unless they have a way to remove an enchantment, then you're in trouble.
But let's for each of the 5 of these, I want to have a quick yes or no. Is this the best Elishnorn card we've seen so far? Of her 3 versions, is this the best?
I gotta give it to Mother of Machines as the best one. I think that doubling the enter the battlefield triggers
and completely shutting off your opponents is darn good.
I can't fight that. This is good, but that's not that. It's not as good as that.
Hard agree. Well, Andrew, do you want to read off everyone's favorite blue creature of all time?
Favorite. Yeah, I like how you're giving this to me. The guy who literally groans every time any version of Jin Gitaxias hits the battlefield in any way. So again, a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, 3 and 2 blue. 5/5 creature, has Ward 2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, draw a card.
Already good.
Cool. Great. Because blue needs more card draw.
Already solid.
All right. And then for 3 and a blue, exile Jin Gitaxias, then return it to the battlefield, transformed under its owner's control. Again, activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in hand. The backside is another saga. First chapter is draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis, which is the backside, the saga. Chapter 2 is return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner's hands. And the final, chapter 3, is you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana costs. Exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield, front face up. Oh boy.
If that third ability goes off, that game is over.
That game should be should be, if not actually over, then to the point of where
when
it's
I
like...
just talked about the fact that there was a clear best, in my opinion, for the backside, it's this one. You literally double your hand size on the first one. This is a Seagate restoration for 4 mana. You get into the 2 and you basically bounce any non-Phyrexians. This is going to hurt most spell-slinging decks because a lot of your creatures aren't Phyrexians. But you may not care at that point because you have so much value you're already netting. And you could protect that in some way. But then you get to the third one. And I mean, if you don't win the game somehow off being able to cast all the spells in your hands for free, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, because that can be creatures. That can be more... spell slingy stuff that involves blue. If you have this in Izzet, some burn spells, some really big, powerful plays that you can make here with just being able to cast all kinds of things for free. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
I can see this one getting built as a commander on its own.
I can see that.
Because it's just good. It's like an all-star in the 99. This was the one praetor I looked at immediately, and when I can find like 3 decks for that card literally right now.
Yeah.
This card's great, and now we have to ask the question, is this the best Jin Gitaxias card we've seen so far? And that's actually a loaded question because
it is.
All 3 of them are kind of gross.
All of them are gross. The one that I've had the most trouble with is Core Augur.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say the second one because that's the one I've played the most.
Yeah, I mean, all 3 of these are gross and disgusting. But I think if Core Augur was cheaper, then for me that would be the best one. But I think because it's 10 mana, I think that this newest Jin Gitaxias takes the lead.
10 mana. Have you played against the Rafine Esper Reanimator deck going around in Historic Brawl?
I have not.
So of course Rafine lets you convoke when you attack, so you pitch cards and then you draw and then you can pitch, right, to buff a creature. And someone literally just played a Reanimator, pitched a Core Augur, pitched all these massive creatures and just reanimated them. Like, I'm dead. Yeah, Core Augur is obviously really tough to deal with, but I think the middle one, in my opinion, is Progress Tyrant. It's probably my favorite of the 3.
Yeah,
I just think the
Progress Tyrant's great.
The upside is so good, and hurting your opponents every turn by countering the first thing they cast will catch some people out. So to me, it's pretty cool. But again, I think I'm most excited for this one over Progress Tyrant. Well, next up we have our Black Praetor Shieldred, 3 and 2 black for a 4/5 Menace or Menace. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or plangswalker. Turgid would not hate this. And then 4 and a black exile.
There's a lot
Shieldred.
of things that Turgid would not hate.
I love how you get any black card that says sacrifice or discard, and you're like, does it Turgid? And then you exile Shieldred and then return to the battlefield, transform it under control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, which isn't going to be hard depending on what you're playing it in.
Yeah.
1 for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Pretty solid. You target, which is the only downside, but still pretty good. Each opponent discards 3 cards, then mills 3 cards. Well, that's not going to be helpful at all. And then the third, put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, exile the True Scriptures, and then return it to the battlefield. I think this Shieldred's the most niche of all the 5 Praetors.
For sure.
I think it's going to be...
Well, the other 2 have just such crazy blanket, wide-reaching,
and even the 2 we haven't talked about yet,
effects.
the 2 we haven't talked about yet in Woburg are both pretty solid, but I think they both are a little bit more general. But I think the decks that can use Shieldred are going to use it to gross effect.
Yeah. I think that as far as this one goes, this is almost purely a support piece.
Oh, for sure.
If you're playing this as a commander, it's literally just to get to that chapter 3 of the saga.
Yeah. It's just to Rise of the Dark Realms and the 3.
And that's just that's going to take so long. That you're looking at minimum 4 turns. Unless you've got a way to proliferate. We're at minimum without looking at proliferate or skipping ahead and adding those lore counters to the saga. It's 4 turns.
I mean, it's kind of great if you can blink it, right? Because then you get that sacrifice over and over again. Like, again, I just see this as to me, this is like, it's probably the only of the 5 Praetors that I think I look at only purely as a support creature. I think the other 4 have decent builds you could have for as commanders.
Yeah.
But for me, I think this is the only one that I truly consider to be an in the 99 card. But I mean, it's a good one at that. If you put this in the right deck, it's going to do a lot of good.
Once you get to the end of that saga,
that game's over.
God help you.
As far as which Shieldred I think is the best, It just depends on what the Shieldred from Down Air United, if you have any draw payoffs at all, is going to end games.
Yeah.
Like a Nekasar deck with middle Shieldred will just end games. Like you're not going to see it coming. The first Shieldred's great in a lot of decks, but I think for me it's the Diamond Air United Shieldred.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The Shieldred the Apocalypse is unquestionably, not unquestionably, the first one is really good, but is very much so the best of the three Shieldreds.
Well, Andrew, moving on to the next Praetor. In fact, the one that I pulled on video, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, around the channel.
Yeah, so the next one is Urabrask. Again, legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor. 2 and 2 red. It's 4/4. It has first strike. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Urabrask deals 1 damage to target opponent. Add 1 red mana. Awesome.
Pretty solid, yeah.
For 1 red mana, exile Urabrask, return it, transformed, blah, blah, blah. Activate only as sorcery. Only if you've cast 3 or more instant or sorcery spells this turn.
So you notice it's only 1 red to do it because your caveat to get there is 3 spells.
Yeah, which is not hard to do in red.
No.
There's plenty of low to the ground.
Not even blue-red either, right? I mean,
blue-red makes it all the easier.
And the great work on the backside.
The great work is the saga on the backside. Chapter 1 is the great work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. Cool. Chapter 2, create 3 treasure tokens.
Casual.
All right.
Yeah.
Chapter 3, until end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. Exile the great word, then return it to the battlefield.
Graveyard. Oh.
Any graveyard. Holy cow.
I think Urabrask got talked about immediately because it's a lot like Burgi from Kaldheim, right? And its ability
the front side is
to
a lot
net
like...
your red mana. I like that it deals 1 damage to an opponent of your choice. Yes, I wish it was every opponent, but again, we're playing in a color that can play Soulfrim, Torbrand, some of the cards we already talked about. You can increment that damage.
Increase that burn.
And let's be honest, if you're playing Spell Slinging, you're already playing Gutter Snipe, you're already playing those things. So the 1 damage isn't that bad. It flipping and dealing 3 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. It would be worse if that was every creature, but that's only your opponent's creatures. So thankfully, all of your little spell slingy tokens you've been making are completely safe.
Yeah, they're safe from that first chapter.
Until you get 3 treasures, which is just going to help you. And then on 3, I mean, if you can't find a way to end the game from that point. Now, the only downside is you can't cast them for free, but the fact that you get to play them from anyone's graveyard just becomes really important. The thing I like
and at this point, you've probably got, at the beginning of your turn, when you flip to that 3rd chapter, you should hopefully have a decent amount of mana at that point to where you could play either 1 or 2 of the big spells that are sitting in a graveyard somewhere, or pull out several of the smaller ones.
So unlike Jin Gataxias, which I think you have to play those spells on 3 when it goes off. The cool part about Urabrask is this is until end of turn. So you flip Urabrask back over. You can then net the mana as you're playing those spells. Net the mana
and the damage.
So it's not like you have to do that all right away. You get to flip back over and have the benefit of starting this.
Yes.
The question for Urabrask for me becomes, can it replace a Torbrand or a Soulfim as like a red damage commander? And I think it can. I mean, it has what you'd want. It nets you mana, right? You think about it. You get those. You get the runaway Steamkins and the gutter snipes down, and you're probably just going to have a field day. With the amount of damage.
Well, and then also just the way, otherwise, I'm thinking you play Goblin Electromancer in Izzet, and if you have him as a support piece. And, there's ways in red and especially blue to decrease the cost of those instants and sorceries. And then also just to profit off of the burn.
I think this card's perfect in a deck like... It's almost perfect in a deck like Magnus the Red or some of those decks that like decrease the amount of cost your spells cost. Because if you can get your spells down to single mana, you could potentially go net 0 on casting spells by getting that red mana back and kind of using it.
It's great in a Balmor list, in Veyrin, any Izzet commander that cares about casting a bunch of spells.
This is a perfect example of a card that's great in the 99, and it can be a great commander.
It could be a good commander.
Although for me, I consider this a 99 card more than I consider it a commander. But I wouldn't argue with you if you built an Urabrask.
Yeah, if you pulled up to the table and said, all right, I got my Urabrask deck, I'd be like, that makes sense.
I'm kind of afraid of it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Is this the best Urabrask? The internet would tell you yes. Nobody likes Urbrest the Hidden, which I think is kind of funny because a haste enabler on a creature is apparently a bad thing according to the internet.
I would disagree.
The middle one is not my favorite thing in the world.
It's a little too niche.
Does it prosper? Yes, but like, but like that's about it. For me, this is my favorite Urbrask. As someone who loves Gruul decks all day, every day, no problem. I still love this card because there's so many better haste enablers. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Xenagos. But I think that this is such a cool card, and this will open up spell slinging decks to people who probably have never considered playing them before.
So, I think personally that Urbrest the Hidden is probably just that little bit much better, but I love what this card does more.
I love that the internet is so anti Urbrest the Hidden. Like, they are so negative.
I don't get that.
And I've never understood why. Well, Andrew, we'll finish it off as every bout through the Praetors should, with green, the best color. With Vorinclex, 3 green for 6/6. Now, what the listeners won't see is with our notes that we make for every episode, I actually put all of the serialized versions of the Praetors. And I have to say, I have never seen this art before until I pulled this. So, for those who don't know, the serialized versions of the Praetors have art exclusive to the serialized versions.
Yes, their own unique art.
So this is a 6/6 for 5, trample reach. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle. Forest cards, not basic forests. It needs to be said.
Well, we all know that the best card in Magic is the forest.
Yes, of course. 6 and 2 green, exile it, and then return it to the battlefield under its control. Transformed, activate on the sorcerer. We get the Grand Evolution. Mill 10 cards, put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. Could be kind of dangerous. Yeah. Distribute 7+1/+1 counters among target creatures you control.
Because why not?
And then the 3, until end of turn, creatures you control gain 1 mana. This creature fights target creature you don't control. Exile it, then return it back to the battlefield. So when you flip this back over, Vorinclex won't have that ability because it wasn't face up when the ability went off. Yeah. But every other creature you control will have it.
Yeah.
I don't love this card as a commander, to be honey be honest. Like, I think it's a fine card, but I've told you earlier in earlier conversations, like, if you were gonna build this as a commander, you could literally pick 12 other green cards and just have a strictly better mono green commander. But like, this in any other mono green deck is just a literally killer card for its slot.
Anything that's a big dumb green.
It's already costed underneath its stats 5 mana for 6/6 with trample and reach. Reach is important. It's an important thing in commander. Not only that, but you get 2 lands to your hand when you cast it. Like, this is, or no, I'm sorry, when it enters the battlefield. I apologize, not when you cast it. So the cool part is if you flip it and it comes back, you get them again.
2 more.
Of course, it gore claws, so of course, very happy about that. But
that's the first thing I thought of when I saw this. I'm like, oh, he's going to put this in
anytime you see a green
Gore
creature with power 4 or greater, you have to ask yourself, does it gore claw? And the answer is yes. I really like the card. Again, this is, to me, it's a perfect 99 green creature in so many green creature decks. I just don't see it as a commander personally.
Yeah, I'm pretty much sharing the exact same.
It's just a real shame that we couldn't get 3 moderately broken Vorinclexes. You know what I mean? Like, we had to get 2 broken Vorinclexes in one.
Well, and I mean that this leads to the next question of, do you think it's the best Vorinclex?
No.
Yeah, I think that.
In fact, I don't think you're going to like my answer because I hate my answer. The first Vorinclex is the best Vorinclex. That card is.
I was going to say that.
Stupid, bro.
It is ridiculously oppressive and for your opponents and wonderfully beneficial for you.
At minimum, it's a mana reflection.
Yeah.
At minimum. At maximum, you lock all your opponents down.
Exactly.
Yeah. The middle Vorinclex is my favorite.
Oh, it's my favorite too.
But I don't think I can.
Yeah, Monstrous Raider is my favorite, but Voice of Hunger is I think it might be undeniably the strongest Vorinclex.
Oh, man. I love that all the Praetors have enough printings to be controversial.
Yes.
Which one you like the best? Who would have thought, man, in the year of our Lord 2023, that we even have 3 versions of all these cards. Well, friends, for sticking with us this long, we're going to round up our discussion. Just talking, each of us are going to go through just a couple of our favorite commanders from March of the Machine. We'll probably each just do a quick elevator pitch on what we like about the commander, what made us pick it. And I don't think either of these are going to be a surprise for us if you know us at all or you've heard us talk before. But Andrew, who's your first commander you want to talk about?
So the first one that I'm going to talk about, I don't know that this is my favorite commander pick out of this set, but This is the one that has finally got me interested in Sultai.
You are now a official card-carrying member of the Sultai Toolkit Club.
Yes, I have now officially brewed Sultai for the first time with Zimone and Dina. Legendary creature, human dryad, costs black, green, blue. It's a 3/4. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Sure, you can have a way to include that kind of support in your deck, but this second part I think is the big thing. You can tap it, sacrifice another creature, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 8 or more lands, repeat this process once. So, yeah, this is great. This is landfall galore. Potentially being able to play 3 lands in one turn, and getting a bunch of landfall payoffs, getting lots of things that benefit from having a bunch of lands on the field. I'm thinking like the flip side of the saga for the Branch of Boseiju. There's so much profit to be had.
Repeat this process. You could potentially go infinite in the sense that if you have something that deals damage when you put lands on the battlefield, you could just end the game if you have enough lands. Like that ability is kind of crazy for what it could do on the upside. For the listeners, at the moment this episode's release, Andrew, your Zimone and Dina list episode will be up on the channel if you're interested in hearing more about Zimone and Dina. That list, partially critiqued by me, will be up.
Hopefully he'll be fair.
For the first card for me, this was the card that literally got passed around in the chat like inappropriate things. This card was the card that once I saw it, I literally lost my mind. This deck is sleeved up and ready to go for our next game night, and I cannot wait to play it. Galton Mavrin, 3 double green, double white, 12/12 dinosaur vampire. Whenever you attack, choose one, make a tapped and attacking XX dino with trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. So Galta is
other is very important here.
Or create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of attacking creatures. I've been looking for I said this, I believe, on our first episode of Commander Brew Crew, I said this, but I've been looking for a Selesnya tokens commander for a long time. I love Jetty, and Jetty does some really fun things for tokens, but this just does that dumb, go wide Selesnya token stuff. The episode for Galton Mavrin is up on the channel. You can check it out.
Yeah, who would have thought that you would have picked big, giant,
literally never
dinosaur that makes big tokens or goes wide with tokens.
And Galta is my favorite dino that they've ever released, so it's very fitting that I would pick this card.
We all shed a tear whenever Galta hits the table. Okay, so then the one that I picked for me, this is probably unarguably my favorite commander for this set, and that is Goro and Satoru. It costs a Grixis, blue, black, red, 3/4 legendary creature, goblin human. It says, whenever one or more creatures you control that entered the battlefield this turn deal combat damage to a player, create a 5/5 red dragon spirit creature token with flying. And then for 1 and a red, creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Oh man, like what's not to, I love Kamigawa Neon Dynasty aesthetically. Probably one of my favorite sets from an aesthetic.
This is one of my favorite showcase frames. We're looking at the Neon Glow frame for Goro, and this is one of my favorite showcase frames of all time.
Yeah, I just love the cyberpunk Japanese aesthetic. But these two cards, these two characters combining together make a wonderful, wonderful card. Put in some ninjutsu, put in some evasion.
Or invasion.
Invasion too. Yeah, I think I have invasion of Kamigawa in my version of this deck. You have a decently cheap haste enabler for the turn if you need to give some haste. If you if you just don't happen to have it ready to go via some other means, just crank out a bajillion 5/5 red dragon spirits. It's pure profit.
For anyone that's listening, I need you to look up this card, look up the showcase frame, because that dragon spirit is super cool.
For sure.
And Andrew's Goro and Satoru list is up on the channel. You can check out that video. This pick for me was near obvious. This card, I think I freaked out as well when this card came out, and I have officially transformed my Goreclaw Terror of Calcesma deck into Sirac and Goreclaw. 6 mana for a 6/5 trample. Other creatures you control have trample. Whenever they're token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It gains haste until end of turn. For me, I think this takes a lot of what Goreclaw's weakness is, which is needing to get your big creatures to attack the turn they come down and giving you a slight upside. I haven't completely given up on the original Goreclaw. I still have my
and nor will you ever.
I have my updated list for Goreclaw up on the channel just in case I don't like the way this plays, but I expect to like it. It's a ton of fun. We get to play some things that put creatures down for free as opposed to just casting them, and my Sirac and Goreclaw list is up on the channel for you to check out.
Well, and I'm really proud of Sirac. He's gone from punching bears to working with them. You know, that's the power of friendship.
The funniest part about this card, just so you know, Goreclaw is the bear skin that's on him in his art in his other card, because we're in the alternate timeline, right?
Yes.
Khan's was the original timeline where he kills Goreclaw, and then now we're in the alternate timeline where he doesn't. And
I'm proud of him. He's grown. So then my last pick for a commander that stood out to me. So yeah, I'm not too sure what to make of this one. I like both of these characters individually that are on this card. From their planes and from their sets. It's Saint Traft and Rem Carolus for blue, red, white. Spirit Human, 3/4. Whenever Saint Traft and Rem Carolus become tapped, create a 1/1 red human creature token if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, create a 1/1 blue spirit creature token with flying. If it's the third time, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. Whenever you cast a spell that has Convoke, untap Saint Traft and Rem Carolus. I would have liked to see a bit more of Rem's original ability on here, with maybe preventing some combat damage or some spell damage. But
we got to see a little bit of Saint Traft, right, with the tokens.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I think if there was something that was going to get me into Convoke, this would be it. I don't know. I could see this potentially not being too great, but at the same time, I also think that if I build this the right way with the right consistency of cards, untap abilities, and a lot of different ways to try and get the straight value out of this as a commander, I think this has quite a few possibilities. But I could see it maybe being not worthwhile to get to that third time. To get that 4/4 angel. But yeah, it's the one that intrigues me the most out of all of the team up commanders that we have.
I think all the Convoke commanders just come down to how you take advantage of tapping them. There are blue enchantments that untap creatures, so there's ways to take advantage of it. I'm kind of let down by both the Convoke commanders, because I think in that pre-con, Kaikar is literally the best commander for that deck.
Yeah.
But my last pick was a commander, to be 100% honest, was not one I planned on talking about. My heart for Dragon decks has been completely full. Miram is a deck that I truly love and enjoy, and it's one of my favorite decks I've had the privilege of building. But I did Zergo and Ojutai for the channel, and I have to say I fell in love with this card. 2 blue, red, white for a 4/4 Orc Dragon. Flying haste. It has hexproof as long as it enters the battlefield this turn. Whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest in the bottom. You may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand. Literally, like a couple days after the set went out, I saw someone play this deck on a commander, show where they play play a game, and it was like literally Miram but in Jeskai.
Yeah.
Like they built the deck the exact same way: Dragon Tempest shenanigans, blinking dragons, that kind of thing. And I said, man, and I've said this in my Zergo and Ojutai episode, which went up, like literally if Miram didn't exist, this would have been the dragon commander that probably stole my heart. Because Miram exists and it's in a color combination I prefer just a little more than this one. But this is a deck I have my deck still built up on Moxfield, and I'd love to revisit this in a few months and see if this is a deck that maybe catches my eye, because it plays a lot of the same core that Miram does. So like I have a lot of the dragons that you'd put in this deck anyway. The only upside for me is that you get to play a lot of those white dragons that I just don't play anywhere else.
I think this certainly does the dragon synergies very well, and I can see why you compare it to Miram. I think they did my boy Zergo a little dirty, because again, I would have loved to see a little bit more of his flavor, I guess, in the text. But it seems that it's mostly just focused on Ojutai. But again, still a very fun looking commander.
I just love that one, you get to play both Ojitais, and both Ojitais are great.
Yeah.
But my list up on the channel is the first deck I've built, a dragon deck in 3 colors that includes all 3 of the ancient dragons it could play in the color combination, because all 3 of them are kind of bonkers in this deck.
Yes.
Actually, funnily enough, the white dragon literally is the best of the 3 of them in this deck, because if the higher you roll with the Dragon Tempest out, the actual better chance you have of ending the game on the spots.
Yes. That's very good.
The one time that ancient, what is it? Gold? No. The white one. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. The one deck where like it's better than Copper Dragon, which is literally like the most expensive one. But friends, I hope you guys enjoyed our discussion around cards in the 99 for March of the Machine. We don't want to be a podcast that just does reviews. Reviews are a cool thing, but we want to try to put our own spin, and I thank Andrew. Thank you so much for this idea. I think this is a really fun idea. I think we can do more to explore March against the Machine, March of the Machine.
Well, I mean, they're marching against the machines too, but
March around the machine. I feel like there's so much more we can do with this set, but we will have. Hopefully the next episode where we will get Jeshua back so that we can record our brew philosophy. If not, maybe we can look at battles or Aftermath. Aftermath is coming up very quickly, and I'm sure there's some stuff we want to talk about there. Just remember, we've got multiple decks going up per week on the channel on our goal to outbrew your favorite Magic channel.
Yes, our goal.
Our collective goal, which will future be Andrew's goal. But we will catch you guys next time.
See you later.